Welcome back to Arcadia. This is going to be our only video for this year, just on account of all the things we've had going on. But this video is going to focus on some new things we have going on the farm and the lessons learned and successes we've had this growing season.
One of the themes going into the start of the growing season was to embrace the chaos and letting things that really wanted to grow here grow and get ahead. And as you'll see, in some areas we may have gone a little bit too far with that.
I had a baby in April, our second baby, so that's kept me rather occupied for the last 5 months. So I've kind of took a step back from most of the gardening. I still did a few things, and also took a step back from the chickens to focus on raising the little guy.
That was an eagle.
There's a big eagle flying over right now. Yeah, and I had one big project carryover from last year that I worked at finishing, and it's almost complete. So that's been my focus this year.
And the video itself is a little bit cobbled together because now we have 2 kids, and even with zone defense, a lot of the initial recordings of it just had a lot of weird toddler noises on it, or babies screaming. So we had to go back, or I had to go back and re-record those things because we were well, any parents will understand why. So it's a little bit cobbled together and a little bit slow coming out because we've sort of had to piece it together as we go with lots of reshooting and content and stuff. And also like to welcome all of the new followers that are following us after we toured Keith's Canadian Permaculture Legacy project. Our channel started and still most of these farm updates are really for family who are spread out across the country to be able to keep up with what we're doing here, and it seems to be morphing into something else. So hopefully, if this is your first introduction to our property, hopefully you'll go back and watch some of the other videos and see how things are coming along over the 3 years that we've been at it. So without further ado, let's check out what's new and what we've learned.
Don't be denied, don't be denied, and let those stars in your eyes shine. We all soar to different heights, so mend those wounded wings and fly, mend those wounded wings and fly. We all see the world through different eyes. Some choose the road, some choose the skies. High above the world, show who you are. From way down here, you're a shooting star. From way down here, you're a shooting star.
One of my bigger picture goals since we've moved in has been to convert as much of this into as much of that as I can. And it looks kind of messy right now, but the lawn reduction strategy, a lot of it has to do with planting of trees. So we have this peach tree here that we're hoping will yield next year. We've got Swiss pines, a couple of those for pine nuts in the very long term, some canopy trees, black cherry. And while those things fill in, been busy planting a whole lot of gardens. And a big lesson learned out of this is I sheet mulched a lot more area than I had plants to fill it. So even with all the stuff that was already here and digging out, it will eventually expand to fit, but I've been hitting a lot of the garden center year-end sales and ended up having to buy a lot of plants to add some diversity of flowers. But the lawn reduction strategy, I would call it a success because every year I have a little bit less lawn to mow. So we've got a nice mix of native species and cultivars. There's a type of coneflower, a type of blanket flower. We've got the native blanket flower too. There's a fancy black-eyed Susan. And it doesn't look like much right now because really this isn't a focus. We're just sort of filling it in as we get plants, but we have a ramps patch that we've started in here. We've got trilliums in here. We've got hostas. We've got Solomon seal. We have, this is black cohosh, which is a full shade plant. We've got a ditch full of daylilies, and eventually this whole section to the left of the screen is going to be a shade garden as well. And eventually we'll just have a few little paths that we mow through some very pretty shade gardens. And we come around the side of the house. This little area has sort of gotten out of control, but we're okay with it because it's not, it's sort of slopey and dry and stuff, so whatever grows there grows. It just happens to be black raspberries. The secondary asparagus patch is popping this year, and this is the one that we've planted in rows so that we're able to get in between it to harvest it and actually find the asparagus and not lose it. And then in behind it, we're slowly expanding. It's a wall, will be a wall of sunchokes. We get a pretty good harvest of Jerusalem artichoke, or artichokes as people call them. And we're slowly expanding that across, so that'll form a barrier, and the asparagus patch will expand a little bit more just in case we didn't have enough asparagus. The pizza oven has been another success, or is another success in progress. We're down to the short quick strokes here, and I will let Kayla tell the story on that.
So another thing on the successes list this summer is we finished our pizza oven. So we started this project in June, July of last year with digging of the foundation, and I laid the last brick of the dome about 2 to 3 weeks ago. And we're in the stage of having to insulate and stucco the dome and stucco the outside portion of the oven, and also do curing fires. So curing fires, the goal is to not fire it to temperature all at once. So you light a series of small fires over the course of 7 days or 2 weeks or however long it takes you, and escalate the temperature. Smoked out here. And right now this is our 4th fire, and we're aiming for about 500 degrees. And because we're at 500 degrees, we can also do some cooking. So we're hoping to put some focaccia in the oven and test it out for the first time. Yeah, so this is called a Pompeii style oven from a company named Forno Bravo. I followed their plans loosely and you know, kind of made some amendments as I went along for our climate and things like that. But it's been a long time coming, and we're really excited to have it near completion. We're hoping that this will allow us to host on-farm dinners and possibly some community bake days. I plan to do most of my bread baking in here, and you know, weekly pizza nights kind of thing.
And we'll do a more detailed video on it because you did a bunch of modifications for cold climate and sort of a lot of sleepless nights over cold climate stuff and frost heave in the foundation and blah blah blah. So we'll do a separate little video, not like a whole how to build a pizza oven, but if you are building a pizza oven in somewhere that gets real cold, these are the things that we did, and it lasted a winter so far.
So far. Yeah.
So far.
Maybe we'll try again.
Fingers crossed. In behind the pizza oven, we are smothering out the grasses and all sorts of overgrown stuff, trying to recover this little bush. I think it's some kind of spirea. And we're going to be planting a couple more trees and making a really photogenic area around the pizza oven because we're going to be spending a lot of time there. And then this stretch back here is has kind of been dead space since we moved in, and this will eventually be a dining area for on-farm dinners. Hey, Jerry. And hopefully that dining will be under the shade of some large canopy trees like this ultra hardy pecan that we got from Grimo Nut Nursery in Niagara. They have successfully grown pecans in Niagara, which is a fair bit warmer than here. But this is a seedling from one of the ones that they've grown successfully, and hopefully it'll take, because that would be pretty cool to have pecans. This patch of sumac here is getting to later succession. In behind it are honey locust, which are also starting to fall over, as you can see. And of course it fell right directly on top of one of our other new trees, which is a chestnut tree. And I was hoping to find American chestnut, or one of those sort of a hybrid, sort of a high percentage American chestnut hybrid, blight resistant, but nobody from the chestnut program answers emails when you say, hey, I'd like to host a couple of trees. So we bought, I think it's a 50-50 hybrid Chinese and American chestnut. It's supposed to be blight resistant, also from Grimo Nut Nursery in Niagara. We've got 2 of these that have taken quite well. So between them and the pecans, we should have a couple of great big hardy trees that their canopies will sort of reach to the edge of the pond, and then we can put fruit trees along the path so that they're not hanging over the path or dropping fruit into the pond. But the chestnut, this will be the nuttery, and the nuttery will sort of continue. There's a little mulberry over here that is sort of struggling. I'm not quite sure where it is, but you can see all these honey locust and black walnut have really taken over. And down that hill there from the mother walnut tree is just a whole bunch of black walnut trees that we're going to let grow up in there and connect over. We've got the row of pecans and chestnuts along right in behind that big ugly looking butternut tree, or sad looking butternut tree. And then we have hazelnuts that we're going to continue along here, and there's some mulberries in here. And that's been a big part of the project, is getting a diversity of trees, especially mast trees, that can help to feed us and our animals. Another failure, and probably the hardest lesson of all learned, like my favorite apple that you can get commercially is the golden russet apple. So we moved in here and I insisted we had to have a golden russet tree, and this sad little tree is our golden russet. And in its first year, the tent caterpillars got it. In the second year, the gypsy moths got it. And this year, the cedar apple rust got it. 3 strikes, you're out. So we're going to come in and we're going to graft some more rust-resistant varieties on this. We're also going to cut down a lot of the juniper, eastern red cedar that's growing on our property, which is the alternate host for the fungus that gets this tree. Which I guess if it's strong enough to survive the winter, we'll graft onto it. If not, then we have a really expensive twig that we'll burn ceremoniously in our camp. This one is a wealthy apple, and same thing. It is very cedar apple rust stricken, and you can spray it with copper and that sort of stuff to protect it. But we would much rather have trees that don't need hand holding. So we're going to graft onto this one too. So we're looking for cedar apple rust resistant cultivars. If there's anybody in our area who has some, we'd be happy to take some cuttings and try out some grafting. But the non-apples are doing quite well. That's another pear there. I think that one's a Concord pear, which isn't the one that I wanted, but that's what they had. Apricot is rocking. And this other cherry tree is rocking, and some elderberries. We'll do another video focusing on the planting of our tree guilds and how we shape them. And this little guy I just planted yesterday. This is a seedling apricot that I got from my brother-in-law, Pat, who you will see. We went and toured their food forest site. 1 acre in an even colder climate than us. And he gifted me a little seedling that he started from a pit, because apricots produce true to type. Now this disaster flaming tire fire, turd burger, whatever derogatory statements you want to make about it, is probably our biggest failure of the 2022 growing season. And this was supposed to be our field crop area. So we had a row of red Fife wheat, we had a row of amaranth and field pea, and this is a row of corn and squash. So there is some pumpkins down there, but the manure that we got, the composted manure that we got, was just loaded with this stuff, which is lamb's quarter seeds. And the lamb's quarter seeds have grown so aggressively, we've cut it back a bunch of times, but only really slowed it down, and it's basically swamped everything. So we're going to come in, cut this down, probably move the seed stuff off to compost somewhere. We're going to tarp it and try again next year. Now in front of our field crop area, and sort of also getting choked out a little bit by the lamb's quarter, is our native pollinator strip. So another piece of what we've been looking to do and looking to build on is adding more native flowering species. Natural Themes Native Plant Nursery, which is nearby us, and I'll put a link to the video in the description that we toured them last year. They propagate and sell plants that are native to our biome, and that the pollinators really love, and bring in all sorts of predators and all sorts of beetles and everything like that. This is sage, the native sage plant. We've got coneflowers in here, some obedient plant, some cardinal flower, and a couple of different kinds of roses and everything. So once we push back this lamb quarters, hopefully this will bounce back a little bit and fill right in, so that we can have a wall of native pollinator species right in between the field crop area, which will hopefully actually have crops instead of weeds next year, and the kitchen garden. Kitchen garden has settled in. One of the things they say about the Back to Eden gardening method is that you really start seeing the benefits in the third year, and then it builds from there. And that is certainly true. The soil fertility is vastly improved this year, and the plants have responded. It's been a really wet year, so it's been a very blighty year for the tomatoes, but strangely the potatoes have been doing all right in the same condition. Kitchen garden area is basically fully transitioned. We've got our fall brassicas in there that will hopefully come along enough. We've got our storage carrots, our storage radishes. We've been pulling out strawberries because they've spread so aggressively. Hasn't been the greatest year for our hot weather summer crops. That is our lone eggplant, but that just means we'll have to enjoy it that much more. One of the other big lessons we've learned, so we have a lot of volunteer plants that self-seed. We didn't plant any of these sunflowers this year, and you can see that borage back there, which the bees absolutely love. It also self-seeds rather vigorously. I pulled a lot of it out when it's sort of tucked away in a corner. I let it stay for the bees. And the other thing, that the chicory came back, the radicchio came back, and I left it standing. And there was a bunch of carrots that I missed, and I said, okay, well, I'll let those go to seed, and we'll save the seed, which we are in the process of doing. But I left too many of them, of those self-seeded plants, and they shaded out a lot of our annual crops that we wanted to keep, or we wanted to promote their growth. So lesson learned, through the undersized onions, poor germination, and just generally our annual crops getting outcompeted and reducing the amount of food that we've been getting out of our garden. Self-seeding is great, but be aggressive in thinning it to prioritize the things that we want to grow. This may sound super cheesy, but this is one of the things I'm most proud of. I'm sure a lot of serious gardeners will laugh at me, but I've never actually been able to make morning glory flower before. I guess not make it, or I've never been able to set the conditions for morning glory to flower before, and this one's flowering pretty vigorously, so I'm going to call that one of my bigger successes, as sad as that may sound to some. Another of our endangered trees is this true American elm, which I just recently pruned back. I'm going to stake it to straighten it up a little bit, but that is a seedling from a Dutch elm disease resistant American elm specimen in Toronto. Compost area is rocking. We've been getting the coffee grounds from our Lucky Stars Cafe in Warkworth, so shout out to Lucky Stars. Thank you very much for all the organic matter that's really helping to drive fertility on the farm. Here's another thing that is new, and those are our mushroom logs. We did 9 shiitake logs and a couple of yellow oyster logs, and we're hoping that we've treated them well enough that they will flush next fall for the first time, and we're aiming to do about 10 mushroom logs a year to inoculate, just pulling the wood out of our woodlot of stuff that's blowing over or is likely to blow over, and low grading our woodlot, and at the same time generating delicious mushrooms. Perhaps our biggest success on the farm this year is right here. Mama hen and her 9 little chicks. She decided she wanted to sit on a nest late summer, so we were happy to oblige her, gave her a dozen eggs to sit on, and she hatched out these 9 a couple days ago. And these are the first in a line of genetics. Basically, the breeds that we've been bringing in, we've been focusing on very good egg producers, good foragers, and good cold hardy birds, because they don't get coddled very much here, and they spend most of the year on pasture, except for just the coldest months of winter. So this is the first step in getting our own barnyard mix that are super well adapted to our site and to our system of management. Sort of a mixed bag of successes and failures this year has been our laying flock. So as far as things that are new, what we did, we doubled our laying flock in the spring. We bought ready to lays instead of buying chicks, and it's always a risk when you get ready to lays. Oh, here they come looking for a handout. But it's always a risk when you get ready to lays that you can have 2 perfectly healthy flocks, and they're both used to different pests and able to sort of manage them differently. I think that, in combination with a wet spring, I think the new girls brought in a different type of lice that they don't seem bothered by, but we had some pretty bad problems with. Ooh, you've got a big crop on you. We'll have to keep an eye on you. So we had some lice problems, and we got pretty acquainted with the back end of a chicken as we trimmed out the affected feathers and dusted their butts with sulfur, just elemental sulfur. But other new stuff, because we expanded the flock, we needed a much bigger coop, so we built a Justin Rhodes chickshaw with some modifications. I might do a little video on the modifications to that. We've had them brush hogging out here for us. You can see they've done some pretty good damage on some really weedy pasture really late in the year. So they're going to get moved tomorrow to this new pasture, which they'll probably go through a lot quicker. And one of the other new things is spent some time in our woods with Uncle Rob, who is a forester and now turned arborist, and just talking about our woodlot here. We have about 10 acres of woodlot that we've been studying how to manage, and doing a lot of observation, and Uncle Rob showed some more advanced chainsaw skills. So things like how safely to fall a dead or diseased standing snag. This one being right next to the path, so we didn't want it falling down on us accidentally, but also getting his ideas on the state of the woodlot, with the multiple layers of canopy and everything. He says it's a very healthy succession, but it is dense. So coming through and low grading it effectively, taking out the diseased stuff, like, or not diseased or damaged or whatever, but like this sugar maple here that has a bit of a knot in the middle of it. The previous owner had already marked it, and that one's going to be getting dropped in this gap where this winter's firewood is. Next spring we're going to turn that into mushroom logs. So really getting our heads around, my head around more advanced chainsaw skills. So how to drop diseased trees, how to drop leaners, how to drop sort of more dangerous, more advanced trees that they don't recommend that that beginners take on, and to be able to put those skills to use in our woodlot to manage it towards a mature, old growth maple, beech, oak forest.
So we hope you enjoyed the update and maybe learned a few things along the way. I think my biggest lesson learned this year was that the only difference between doing something and not doing something is actually doing it. So there was a lot of procrastinating and uncovering the pizza oven, and taking those final steps to close in the dome and get it running. And it did take most of the summer, but I had a good excuse, so so there's that. But now we have this awesome pizza oven that we've been entertaining with and enjoying on a weekly basis.
My biggest lesson learned, and I think it's been about 3 years in the making, is just how hard it is to grow food in significant quantities. There's a huge amount of things to learn along the way, and the amount of things that you don't know when you start doing it you reveal themselves pretty quickly. And as you invest in the soil and invest in the infrastructure year after year after year, you continue to learn, and then nature continues to throw you curveballs that sometimes you swing and miss, and sometimes you hit home runs. So we're really gaining an appreciation for just how hard it is to grow food in even to be a self-reliant level of food production. So yeah, we hope you'll check out the other videos on the channel. We have one more video coming this year. See what I mean about baby noises? We have one more video coming this year of our brother-in-law's food forest project in the even colder climate than ours, that we hope to have out in the next couple of weeks or so, time permitting. So in the meantime, if you'll like the video, like the channel, subscribe to the channel so you can get all our updates, we'll be happy to see you back again. And if there's things you'd like us to cover in our next videos, please let us know in the comments. And I think we're out of time.
Yes, thanks for watching.